Hello, my name is Helon Habila, and I'm the author of Waiting for an Angel. And I just want to say a few things about the book, about why I wrote it, what the book is about, what the book means to me. The book was written in 2000. Actually, I finished writing it in the year 2000, even though I started writing it much, much earlier than that. Back when I was at university, I went to the University of Jos, and I started thinking about the idea for the story back then. And I finished writing it when I was living in Lagos in 1999, 2000. That was when I finished it, and I self-published the book as a collection of short stories, actually, under the title Prison Stories. And then it was republished in England as a novel with the title Waiting for an Angel. For me, the book is about a certain time in the life of Nigeria, in the life of a country. It's about the military dictatorship that we went through in the years, in the decade 1990 to 2000, basically. And my focus is just to show how people tried to survive, even though the times were very hard. But people were very creative. People kind of were not just mere victims, but they survived. They tried to express themselves. And I think this is clearly captured in the life of Lumba, the main character. When the book opens, we find him in prison. And I think the metaphor, the prison as a metaphor, runs throughout the book. You keep coming back to the idea of people being deprived of their freedom, of their rights as human beings. It's not just Lumba, even though Lumba is the kind of main example because he's actually in a real prison when the book starts. But he's in prison unjustly. He is in prison for a crime that he did not commit. He was just working as a journalist, and then he's arrested together with the other demonstrators, and he's put in prison. And he's not allowed to see a lawyer, and he's not tried, he's just there, and he doesn't know when he's going to get out. And then he develops a relationship with the prison superintendent, who keeps coming back to him and asking him to write a poem so that he can give to his girlfriend. And that's what the whole chapter is about. So I think the primary focus of that chapter is trying to examine the idea of freedom and self-expression, and about ambition, and freedom, free will, Even though you find the warders and the walls erected around Lumba trying to confine him, trying to silence him, but he keeps writing poetry. He finds pieces of paper here and there, and pen, and he keeps writing. So I think the idea is that you can never really silence a person totally. As long as a person wants to create, you can imprison his body, but you cannot imprison his mind. That's just what I'm trying to say there. Lumba, how did I come up with the character Lumba? Lumba, I like to think, is someone who is a bit similar to me, at least the way I used to be, when I was working as a journalist in Lagos, because Lumba is a journalist and I was also a journalist. He was working in Lagos and I was working in Lagos at the time for a newspaper. But that is where I think the similarity stops. I made him a journalist because for me it was easier. I could describe how he comes to work, what he does in a day, because I was doing the same thing as a journalist. So I used Lumba as part of my research because I didn't have to do extra research and kind of create a character from nothing. I created a character that was similar to me, who was also a writer, who was trying to be a writer, just like I was trying to be a writer. The narrative technique in the book I can only describe as non-linear or fragmentary. For instance, you find the first chapter is actually the last part of the story because we find Lumba in prison. And then at the end of the book, we discover how he is put in prison. And in between, you find how other things happen. The people he met, the friends he met, how they all live together, and how he became a journalist, and all these things are in between. So there's a kind of non-linear, fragmentary narrative style. And why did I choose that style? Because everything a writer does is deliberate. I mean, you sit down to write a book and you ask yourself, what is the best way of saying what I want to say? How do I tell my story in a way that's going to make sense, that's going to make the reader think, that's going to make the story come alive in so many ways? So I decided not to use a linear, straightforward narrative technique. I decided to break it into pieces and to mix up the pieces, as it were. And my intention was to try to capture the way people lived under the military dictatorship in the 1990s in Nigeria. Life was uncertain. Life didn't just go from A to Z. There were a lot of frustrations, a lot of unexpected disturbances. People were arrested without any reason. People were put in prison. People were killed in the 1990s under the dictatorship. So I was trying to capture that. That was why I used the fragmentary, non-linear narrative style. And some of the chapters you find, the chapters are being told in the first person, other chapters are being told in the third person. You know, all these things, I mixed up everything. Just to create diversity, variety, and also to kind of show the uncertainty of the times. Yeah, and I think one important aspect of the book is that each chapter can actually stand alone as a short story. Like Longer, you can read it from beginning to end and put it aside, and you're finished. That's the main chapter, the first chapter. Or you can read the chapters as kind of continuous pieces that are linked together, and actually that's the whole idea. That's why you can call it a novel, or you can call it a collection of short stories. It's a non-linear novel, or it's a novel in stories, if you want to call it that. So each chapter, like the Angel chapter is also a short story, or the chapter titled Poverty Street is a short story. It has a definite ending and a definite beginning and a middle, everything is there. You find some of the characters coming back again from story to story, like Longer, like Bola, you know, coming back over and over again. Like Longer's editor, his name is James, he's also in all the other, some of the other stories. So that's basically what I tried to do. You find a kind of freedom of style, if you like. Now that was by choice. I tried to do that just to make the book kind of discontinuous. Yeah, I wrote the book a long time ago. That was my first book. Looking back at it now, I must say I'm happy, you know, with the way it turned out. It could have turned out worse than it did. I think I just said everything I wanted to say at that time. I think as a writer, you have things that you want to say at specific moments. That was what I felt I had to express about myself, about people like me, about my country at that time. And I've moved on. You know, my second novel is about something different. My third novel is about something else. And the one I'm working on now, which is going to be my fourth novel, is about entirely something else. So as a writer, you move, you grow, you change, you know, you develop. So looking back at Waiting for an Angel, I'm proud of it. And I hope that the readers will also enjoy reading it. Yeah, and for those young people who want to be writers, all I can say is, you know, just to keep at it. It's very hard, it's not easy, but you have to persevere and to believe in what you want to do. I can remember the first time I held a copy of the finished book in my hand, you know, I felt, you can't express it in words. It's a kind of fulfillment of your ambition, you know, what your teachers taught you, what you learned on your own, all the things you feel that you couldn't achieve because it looked so hard, you know, when you were attempting to do it. And then you did it. And then you feel kind of sense of fulfillment. It's something that you cannot express in words. And you're just thankful that, you know, you got there, you got to that point, you know. And so my advice is just keep at it, you know, keep practicing, keep reading, keep hoping. Yeah.